Welcome to Trending Unpacked, where we break down the stories everyone's talking about. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating online debate that stirred up a surprising amount of emotion. The recent logo redesign from Cracker Barrel.
It's amazing, isn't it? How simple change can just blow up.
Exactly. It seems like just tweaking a familiar image can spark, a veritable culture war online. We're going to try and unpack why this particular logo change has captured so much attention. You've probably seen the side-by-side comparisons popping up on your feeds, right? The outrage, the defenses.
Yeah.
It's honestly a masterclass in brand loyalty and the sheer power of nostalgia.
Absolutely. It tells you a lot about how people connect with these brands on a, well, almost personal level.
Totally. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's unpack this first. Many of you listening might have scrolled past a picture of the old and new Cracker Barrel logo, maybe even, chuckled at a meme or two.
There have been quite a few good ones, yeah.
But for those who haven't had a chance to really zoom in, maybe you just saw it briefly, what were the specific visual tweaks? What exactly did Cracker Barrel change that kicked off all this conversation?
Well, what's one intriguing aspect here is that the core elements, the barrel, the man sitting there, the overall shape, they're still unmistakably present. It's not like they threw everything out.
Okay, so it's still recognizable as Cracker Barrel.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But the execution is distinctly different. It's almost as if someone took the original design and put it through a digital polishing process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I follow. Smoothed out.
Exactly. The new design is characterized by, well, cleaner lines, much more precise. There's a noticeable shift towards more modern typography, the font, basically. And significantly, there's a reduction in the intricate detailing, all those little textures and lines that were on the classic barrel and the man icon.
Right.
So it's not a complete reimagining, no, but it's definitely a fundamental reinterpretation of those same elements.
Okay, so it sounds like we're not talking about a total overhaul that would make it unrecognizable like some brands do. It's more of a refinement, a simplification.
That's a good way to put it, refinement.
Can you walk us through what cleaner lines and less intricate detailing actually do to the feel of the logo? Because I imagine that fundamentally changes how Cracker Barrel communicates its identity visually, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big shift in feeling. To really appreciate it, let's first, let's conjure up the image of the old logo. You probably remember the outlines were maybe a bit thicker.
Yeah, kind of chunky almost.
Right, chunky, maybe even with a slight, almost charming irregularity to them. It gave the impression of something hand-drawn or, carved, almost like a piece of rustic folk art.
Okay.
And there was a discernible texture to the barrel itself, suggesting wood grain. You could almost feel the wood. And the man's features his hat, his mustache, that sort of gentle gaze. They were more distinctly defined, almost etched into the design. It really leaned heavily into a homespun, folksy, almost tangible aesthetic.
Tangible, yeah. Like you could touch it.
Exactly. It felt authentic because it felt a little rough around the edges, like something you might find in an old antique shop or, well, a country store.
Right. So how does the new one compare then? What do those cleaner lines do?
Okay, so contrast that with the new logo. Those cleaner lines translate to a much more streamlined, uniform look. Often the lines themselves are thinner.
Thinner.
The edges are sharper, the curves are smoother, almost, geometrically perfect in some ways. And the less intricate detailing that means much of that perceived texture, that fine-grained character, it's just been smoothed out.
So the wood grain feel is gone.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Or significantly reduced. The man, for instance, he might appear almost as a simplified silhouette now, or maybe with fewer individual features drawn in. He becomes a more abstract, almost two-dimensional representation rather than that detailed sort of three-dimensional portrait feel he had before. It effectively reduces visual clutter. The goal seems to be immediate clarity, making it easier to recognize quickly.
So it's a deliberate move away from that perceived, tangible, almost tactile texture towards something that feels inherently more, digital native. Is that the right word?
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. Digital native. It's a transition from a logo that felt like it belonged on a hand-painted sign outside a country store to one that's really optimized for clarity on a smartphone screen.
Yeah.
And that evolution definitely extends to the modern typography you mentioned.
Right, the font change. What's the story there?
Well, the old logo often featured serif fonts. Those are the letter forms with the small decorative lines, the little feet attached to the end of strokes.
Like Times New Roman, that kind of thing.
Exactly, like that style. Serifs often evoke a sense of tradition, history, classicism. They lend an air of established authority, maybe timelessness. They might have been bolder in the old logo, perhaps even slightly irregular in their weighting, which further enhanced that rustic, almost artisanal feel.
Okay, got it. And the new font.
The new design, on the other hand, typically employs sans serif fonts, literally without serifs, so no little feet.
Like Arial or Helvetica, much cleaner looking.
Just like that. These fonts are characterized by straight, clean lines, often with uniform stroke widths, and generally a lighter, more minimalist appearance. They're almost universally associated with a contemporary, sleek, minimalist look.
And easier to read small, I guess.
That's their primary advantage, especially in digital contexts. Superior readability at small sizes on screens. So yeah, you're looking at a logo that moves from embodying tangible texture and an almost historical script to one built for digital clarity and a contemporary feel. It's a very deliberate and strategic shift, no doubt about it. It signals an attempt to modernize its visual language.
That's a fascinating breakdown of the visual semantics at play. It really sounds like these design changes are more than just cosmetic tweaks. They're actually tied directly into Cracker Barrel's very DNA, its whole image. But is this also part of a larger movement we're seeing across the corporate world? We'll get to that. But first, I think, to truly understand why people care so much about a logo change like this, we need to understand what Cracker Barrel is to so many people.
Yeah, the context is crucial.
It's more than just a restaurant, isn't it?
Yeah.
It evokes a very specific feeling, a certain vibe. Can you walk us through that history and cultural image, that deep-rooted identity?
Sure. And looking at the broader context is key here. Cracker Barrel isn't just, a place to grab a bite. It's really become an institution, particularly ingrained in the cultural fabric of the southern United States, but known nationwide, too.
Right.
It was founded way back in 1969 in Lebanon, Tennessee. The founder, Dan Evans, had this vision, apparently, to create a restaurant that resembled those old country stores you used to find along highways.
Oh, interesting. So that was the plan from the start.
From day one, yeah. Its identity has been firmly planted in that southern country-themed experience. It's designed deliberately to evoke a sense of nostalgia, for a simpler time.
You're right. For so many people, it's a landmark. You see that sign on the highway. And it's not just a stop for a meal. It's like part of the journey itself. A reliable comfort, maybe, on a long road trip.
Exactly. That reliability is a huge part of it.
So what does that Southern country-themed experience truly encompass? Beyond the comfort food, which is, let's be honest, a big draw.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
But it's much more.
Can you paint a more vivid picture for us? What are the sights, the sounds, maybe even the unique quirks that define this brand experience for someone walking in the door?
Okay, absolutely. Let's try. Imagine you pull off the highway, right? The first thing you often see isn't just some basic utilitarian sign. It's usually a wide, inviting porch.
With the rocking chairs.
Lined with those classic wooden rocking chairs, exactly. Almost daring you to just sit down, stay a while, slow down before you even go inside.
Yeah, they really make you pause.
And then you step inside, and it's like, whoa. It's a deliberate journey back in time. It's a meticulously crafted, immersive environment. The air often carries that, faint, comforting scent of maybe maple syrup, coffee brewing. Bacon, definitely. Maybe even a hint of old wood polish, or if it's cold out, a burning fireplace. And your eyes immediately meet shelves just packed floor to ceiling with this curated collection of stuff.
The general store part.
The general store, yeah.
Right.
Nostalgic candies you haven't seen in years, retro toys, local jams, quirky home goods. It's a veritable general store from a bygone era, complete with, yes, actual barrels and old-fashioned signage everywhere. They're not just selling food. They're selling an experience, a memory, a feeling.
It's almost overwhelming, but in a comforting way.
It is. The interior design is just this tapestry of Americana. You've got mismatched antique-style decor, often that roaring fireplace providing warmth and a focal point, those little checkerboard games on every single table.
Oh, yeah, the peg games.
Those peg games, yeah. And usually classic country music playing softly in the background. Every single element, down to the lighting, it's meticulously designed to evoke a very specific feeling. Warmth, familiarity, and a slower, simpler pace of life.
It's really not just casual decor, is it? It's like stepping into a narrative.
Exactly. It's an immersive narrative, almost a living museum of a certain kind of idealized Americana. Yeah. And this commitment to an old-fashioned aesthetic creates this powerful sense of continuity, a timelessness that customers have really come to rely on. It's become a place where generations have created shared memories.
Around road trips, family traditions.
Absolutely. And just that comforting sense of predictability in a world that often feels unpredictable.
That's a truly powerful depiction. It really sounds like they've built this profound emotional connection with their customers over, what, 50 plus years now, rooted in this very carefully curated experience.
Decades, yeah.
So any change, no matter how seemingly small, like a logo tweak, must feel incredibly significant then, almost like altering a treasured family heirloom or something.
Precisely. That consistent, comprehensive branding over decades, hitting all those sensory notes, has built an incredibly strong, almost fiercely loyal emotional connection with its customer base. That original rustic, woodsy logo, the man with the barrel, it wasn't just a symbol. It perfectly encapsulated this whole established identity.
It's like a promise.
It really was. It whispered tales of tradition, hospitality, a bygone era, a visual promise of the experience waiting inside. It became a visual shorthand for all those comforting experiences, those shared family memories. So when that visual shorthand changes,
Yeah.
it's not merely a design alteration for many people. It feels like an alteration of the very essence of those memories, those values, and the cherished history associated with the brand. It touches upon something deeply personal.
Given this incredibly strong, nostalgic identity Cracker Barrel has so carefully built, it makes this particular logo change feel all the more impactful. And as we touched on, it certainly isn't happening in isolation, is it? This isn't just Cracker Barrel doing its own thing.
Not at all.
We've seen so many other brands simplifying their look over the years. Is Cracker Barrel just following a broader current in the design world, or is there maybe something uniquely modern at play here, driving this?
This naturally leads us to ask about the motivations behind these kinds of rebrands, and you're absolutely right. Cracker Barrel is not an anomaly, far from it. Our sources point out pretty clearly that this move follows a larger trend of brands simplifying and modernizing their logos
Okay.
to work better on apps, social media, and digital-first platforms. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a massive industry-wide wave. It's driven by the demands of our increasingly, digital-first world.
Right. We hear terms like blandification sometimes, or corporate modernism thrown around to describe this trend. Can you explain the rationale behind it? From a design and marketing perspective, why is this mass simplification happening across so many diverse brands? It seems counterintuitive sometimes.
Yeah, blandification is definitely a word you hear a lot in the critiques. But the rationale from the brand side is overwhelmingly driven by functionality and ubiquity, especially in our digital landscape.
Functionality, okay. How so?
Let's think about the practicalities. Imagine a complex, textured, highly detailed logo like the old Cracker Barrel logo was, right? With its perceived wood grain, the little intricacies of the man's face, even the subtle nuances of its previous typography.
Okay.
Now, shrink that logo down, way down, to a tiny icon on your phone's home screen.
Like a little square.
Yeah, or a small profile picture on social media, or even just that tiny favicon in your web browser tab. When you do that, those rich details often become utterly lost. They can pixelate, they can blend together into an unreadable blob, or they just lose their visual clarity and impact.
Right, you can't even tell what it is sometimes.
Exactly. The intricacy that works beautifully on a huge highway sign or maybe a full-page print advertisement simply doesn't translate effectively to that small digital real estate where literally every pixel counts.
So simplicity wins online.
Simplified logos, in stark contrast, offer a multitude of advantages. They provide superior readability and recognition across a huge spectrum of sizes, from a towering billboard down to that minuscule app icon. They tend to be faster to load on websites and mobile apps.
Which matters for user experience.
Critically important, yeah. In a fast-paced digital environment, loading time is key. And crucially, simplified logos ensure consistent brand representation and clarity across all these diverse digital touchpoints, whether it's a mobile app, smartwatch interface, a smart TV screen, maybe even a virtual reality environment down the line.
Wow, hadn't even thought of VR logos.
Right. It's not just about what looks modern for modernity's sake. It's about making a brand instantly recognizable, legible, and functional in every digital corner of our lives, ensuring it stands out rather than just blurring into the background noise.
That makes perfect sense from a technical and strategic standpoint. I mean, if your brand needs to live effectively on a tiny phone screen just as much as it does on a giant highway sign, you really have to adapt to those different mediums.
You have to.
It's about more than just looking aesthetically pleasing. It sounds like it's about being seen and understood, period.
Fundamentally, yes.
But is there a downside to that rapid shift towards the digital? Does it risk losing some of the very tangible brand personality that made Cracker Barrel so unique in the first place, that rustic charm we talked about?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That encapsulates the very tension at the heart of this entire debate. From a pragmatic business perspective, adapting for digital environments is almost, a no-brainer for survival and relevance today.
Seems necessary.
It does. However, for the long-time customer, maybe someone who rarely uses the app and mostly experiences the brand through that big sign along the highway or in the physical restaurant itself, for them, this digital-first adaptation can absolutely feel like a compromise. A compromise of what they've always known and loved.
They don't see the digital benefit, maybe?
They might not perceive those functional benefits nearly as strongly as they feel the emotional loss of the familiar, the authentic, the unpolished character that really resonated with Cracker Barrel's whole old-fashioned ethos. It's a trade-off, a definite trade-off. And the consequences of that trade-off are where the real controversy, the online firestorm, really lies.
Yeah. This technical shift, however necessary it might seem to the company, directly clashes with those deep emotional ties customers have, which leads us right into the online reaction, the firestorm we've witnessed. It's truly fascinating how a company's attempt to modernize can ignite such a passionate, almost personal backlash. So once the new logo dropped, maybe leaked, the internet just went wild, didn't it?
Oh, instantly. It was everywhere.
And one of the biggest reactions, often expressed with what seemed like genuine anguish online, was this idea that Cracker Barrel was losing its soul. That phrase kept coming up. What's behind that intense feeling, that sense of a brand somehow betraying its very essence?
Yeah, losing its soul is powerful language. And one intriguing aspect here is just how immediate and visceral the reaction was, especially from longtime fans. Our sources describe this perfectly as a nostalgia clash.
Nostalgia clash. I like that.
It fits, right? It's where customers feel this incredibly deep, almost familial attachment to the original logo. For many, that original design isn't just a piece of graphic design. It's become this profound repository of personal memories, shared experiences, and a very specific cultural identity.
Like a symbol loaded with meaning.
Exactly. It functions as a powerful visual shorthand for those childhood road trips with the family you mentioned. The warmth of Southern hospitality, the comfort of a familiar, unchanging meal, and that unique, inviting atmosphere of the general store, all wrapped up in that one image.
So it's not really about the lines and fonts on a literal level for these people. It's about what those lines and fonts represent. Almost like, I don't know, a cherished family crest or a beloved old photograph, or even a familiar melody that just instantly transports you back in time.
Precisely. That's a great analogy. For someone who grew up with Cracker Barrel as a staple of their family vacations, maybe holiday gatherings, or just reliable Sunday dinners after church, for them, the old logo isn't just a design, it's a direct, almost sacred link to those cherished experiences.
Oh, wow. Sacred even.
Well, it evokes the feeling, right?
Yeah.
Sitting in those iconic rocking chairs, the comforting aroma of pancakes and bacon, the thrill of finding some unique little trinket in the general store. So that fervent claim you hear about the brand losing its soul, it suggests a profound betrayal of these deeply ingrained associations, a perceived departure from the very essence of what made Cracker Barrel special, unique, and trustworthy to them for so long.
Yeah.
For many, especially those whose entire lives have seen that particular logo representing those comforting, sort of unhurried moments, it can genuinely feel like an erasure of their personal history, like dismantling a familiar cultural landmark brick by brick.
That's a powerful point. It truly resonates that it's not just seen as a company making a cold business decision. It's almost like a public figure, someone you felt you knew, altering their identity in a way that people feel personally affected by.
That's a good way to think about it.
And that perceived shift from authentic and timeless to potentially generic or corporate, well, it certainly can trigger deeply emotional responses. And this feeling of loss, it sounds like it's often compounded by the perception that Cracker Barrel isn't innovating, but just conforming, just following that wider, less distinctive trend, rather than preserving its unique character.
Exactly. That's a huge part of the critique.
So on one side, you have this profound emotional connection rooted in decades of personal history and nostalgia. On the other side, you have corporate drive for modern minimalism, digital efficiency, reaching new markets. How do these two powerful, seemingly irreconcilable forces collide so publicly and so dramatically online?
Well, a critical point emerges right there, doesn't it? It's about the inherent, often unavoidable tension between corporate strategy and consumer sentiment. We see these online arguments, often quite passionate, quite angry sometimes, that Cracker Barrel is merely following that blandification trend in design,
There's that word again.
right? Where logos are stripped down to minimal fonts, flat graphics, losing all their texture and quirks. The term blandification itself is highly charged, isn't it? It implies that in this relentless pursuit of digital adaptability, universal appeal, and a sleek, modern look, brands inadvertently sacrifice their unique character, their distinctiveness, their, well, soul.
It's almost like a brand losing its regional accent, or its unique sartorial style, its way of dressing, in an effort to just fit in with a global standardized aesthetic. It might gain clarity on a screen, but it loses its personality in the process.
That's an excellent analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
What a corporation sees as efficient, modern, universally adaptable, forward-thinking. Consumers, especially loyal ones, might perceive as impersonal, uninspired, and maybe indistinguishable from a dozen other brands striving for the exact same minimalist aesthetic.
Everything starts to look the same.
That's the fear. The old logo had character. It had a story embedded in its rustic features, its slight imperfections, its historical cues. When those elements are stripped away, even for perfectly valid functional reasons we discussed, it can feel like the brand is abandoning its narrative, its heritage, its personality. It's kind of akin to taking a beloved, worn-in piece of antique furniture, maybe something passed down, and replacing it with a sleek, minimalist, mass-produced item from IKEA. Functionally superior, perhaps, in some ways, but emotionally bankrupt for those who had a deep connection to the original.
That hits home. And this is where the internet truly shines, or perhaps, ignites. With memes taking center stage as this really potent form of cultural critique, I've seen so many memes just juxtaposing the old character-filled logo with the new simplified one, often with captions lamenting the loss of personality, authenticity, or even playfully mocking the new design's perceived generic quality.
Oh, the memes are incredibly powerful vessels for that collective sentiment, aren't they? They act as this form of rapid-fire, widely distributed cultural commentary. They're not just fleeting jokes. They quickly distill and amplify that feeling of disconnect, that frustration that something beloved has been altered in a way that feels generic or cold or even just a little bit sad.
They spread like wildfire.
They do. They transform what is essentially a corporate design decision into a shared cultural moment. They allow thousands, maybe millions of people to instantly voice their agreement, their collective mourning for what they perceive as lost, and their shared exasperation with what feels like a homogenization of culture. They become a rallying cry, a visual shorthand for a broader critique of corporate choices versus consumer desires and memories.
And this generational divide you mentioned earlier, that definitely adds another intricate layer to the whole debate, doesn't it?
Okay.
Is this purely a matter of subjective taste, like some people just like the old one better? Or is there a significant generational element at play here where different age groups literally perceive and value different things in a brand's visual identity? Do younger audiences genuinely see something different, maybe better, in the new logo that older generations might miss?
Zooming out, I think we can absolutely see this highlighting a profound generational divide. It's not just taste. Consider younger audiences, right?
Yeah.
Those who have grown up immersed in a world saturated with digital interfaces, sleek tech aesthetics, minimalist design principles across pretty much every platform they interact with daily.
It's their normal.
It's their normal. They might find the clean, digital-friendly look of the new Cracker Barrel logo appealing, intuitive, maybe even refreshing. It's perfectly aligned with their contemporary visual language. For them, the old logo might have even felt cluttered or dated, or perhaps even a little fussy. It speaks to their lived experience where efficiency and clarity in digital spaces are just paramount.
Okay, that makes sense. So the opposite for older folks.
Well, conversely, older customers whose memories, whose nostalgia, whose brand loyalty are deeply, deeply tied to that original aesthetic, they might feel a significant sense of alienation. They often see the change not as an update or an improvement, but as a direct rejection of tradition, a perceived abandonment of the comfort and familiarity they've always associated with Cracker Barrel.
They feel left behind, maybe?
Perhaps. They might not perceive the functional benefit of a simplified digital logo nearly as strongly as they feel the emotional loss of the familiar, the authentic, that old-fashioned charm they cherished. To them, it's not just a logo. It's a symbol of a bygone era, maybe their own past being erased or disregarded.
So it really boils down to more than just what looks good or bad aesthetically. It's about what looks right or authentic to different generations based on their unique lived experiences and the visual lexicon, the visual language they've grown accustomed to. It's almost like a clash of different visual literacies.
Exactly. That's a very insightful way to put it. The clash of visual literacies. And this dynamic extends far beyond just logos and advertising, right? It speaks to broader cultural shifts and that constant negotiation we have in society between continuity and change.
Tradition versus progress.
Pretty much. The debates online, often fiercely fueled by these very memes we talked about, they become a proxy, a stand-in for larger discussions about cultural identity. What elements of our past do we choose to preserve versus what do we allow or even encourage to evolve? The tension between tradition and modernity, and how brands, which have become these huge cultural touchstones, navigate these often conflicting tensions.
Yeah.
It highlights just how deeply interwoven brands can become with our personal and collective identities. They act as mirrors, reflecting our own evolving values, anxieties, and aesthetics back at us.
So, with all these strong reactions piling up, this passionate defense of the old logo, and this genuine sense of loss being expressed, we really have to ask, why do brands even bother taking this enormous risk in the first place? It seems like such a huge gamble, especially with a brand that has such a loyal following. The potential downsides seem massive. It truly does seem like a huge gamble, doesn't it? Inviting so much potential backlash, so much negative feeling from a customer base that is famously loyal. Why then do companies like Cracker Barrel decide to take the plunge into such a potentially controversial redesign, knowing full well the emotional attachment their customers have?
Yeah, it's a fair question. And it naturally leads us to ask, what's the driving force? Why take that risk?
Yeah.
Our sources indicate pretty strongly that rebrands, like this one, often accompany efforts to reach new markets or refresh public perception.
Okay.
It's very rarely just an arbitrary decision to change a picture because someone got bored. It's almost always a strategic move, underpinned by some pretty clearly defined business goals.
Let's elaborate on that first part, reaching new markets. What kind of specific markets are we talking about here? And why would an established, beloved logo, one steeped in all that nostalgia we discussed, actually hinder that expansion? Surely a recognizable brand is always a good thing, right?
Well, yes and no. While a recognizable brand is indeed valuable, an outdated or perhaps overly niche brand identity can sometimes become a barrier to growth. Reaching new markets often means actively aiming for younger demographics, for sure.
The next generation of customer.
Exactly. Or expanding into more urban areas, where perhaps that very specific southern country aesthetic might not resonate quite as universally as it does in its traditional heartland. Or simply broadening the overall consumer base beyond its traditional, often geographically specific loyalists.
So the old look might feel too specific, maybe even exclusionary to some.
That's the potential risk, yeah. For a brand like Cracker Barrel, while its current base is incredibly strong and dedicated, its traditional image, charming as it absolutely is to many, could inadvertently signal to some potential new customers that the brand isn't really for them, or that it's stuck firmly in the past. It might be perceived, rightly or wrongly, as exclusive rather than broadly inviting.
Okay. And what about the second part, refreshing public perception? What does that involve?
Right. Refreshing public perception.
Hmm.
This could mean a few things. It could mean shedding an image that has perhaps become a little dusty over time, maybe perceived as old-fashioned in a negative way. It could be about signaling innovation, not just in the logo, but maybe hinting at changes in the menu, the store experience, company culture, signaling that to investors, potential partners, and even attracting a younger workforce.
The internal audience matters too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Or it could simply be about appearing more contemporary and relevant in an increasingly competitive and rapidly evolving marketplace. In an era where younger consumers, especially, are constantly looking for what's new, what's fresh, what aligns with their digital native sensibilities, a brand might feel compelled to update its visual identity just to avoid being perceived as stagnant or irrelevant or even completely out of touch. They want to convey vitality and forward movement, not just rest on their laurels.
So it's a very forward-looking move then, almost an attempt to future-proof the brand, even if it means ruffling some feathers and potentially upsetting a segment of their core audience right here in the present.
That seems to be the calculation, yes.
There must be intense internal pressure sometimes to evolve, right? Especially when you see your competitors modernizing their look and feel, maybe stealing a march on you.
Absolutely. The competitive landscape in the restaurant and retail sector is just fiercely intense. If other chains, even ones with equally long histories, are updating their branding to appeal to modern sensibilities, to work better on digital platforms, a brand like Cracker Barrel might genuinely feel that not changing is actually the bigger, more existential risk in the long run.
The risk of doing nothing.
Precisely. The fear is becoming irrelevant, becoming a relic of the past that only appeals to a steadily shrinking demographic. So they might conclude they have to risk alienating a portion of their core, incredibly loyal audience in the short term to secure the brand's future viability and ensure it remains attractive and accessible to new generations of consumers, those who will become the loyal customers of tomorrow. It's a calculated gamble, really, betting on long-term growth and survival versus protecting immediate sentiment.
That makes the stakes incredibly high. But, like you said, the million-dollar question remains. Will it actually pay off for Cracker Barrel? So what's the potential outcome here? Is it black and white? Will this new logo genuinely help Cracker Barrel bring in that new generation of customers? Or will it simply push away the people who've loved it for decades, inadvertently diluting the very brand identity it sought to modernize?
Looking at the broader picture, it's such a classic balancing act for brand strategists, isn't it? A real tightrope walk with significant potential consequences on either side. The new logo might, and it's still a might indeed, help Cracker Barrel attract those younger audiences.
How so, specifically?
Well, a sleeker, more modern aesthetic could certainly appear more approachable to some, more relevant, more aligned with the contemporary tastes of those who aren't already deeply invested in the historical, nostalgic image of the brand. This could potentially translate into tangible results. Increased foot traffic, especially in newer or more urban locations. Greater digital engagement.
Like more app downloads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More app downloads, more shares and interactions on social media platforms, maybe a higher conversion rate for online ordering if they push that. And ultimately, the hope is it fosters long-term brand relevance and growth within those previously untapped demographics. That's the pro side of the argument.
Okay, but the con side seems pretty scary, too.
Oh, the risk is undeniable and significant. Alienating those loyal, long-standing customers, those folks who have that deep emotional connection we keep talking about to the original logo and everything it represents, they might feel a profound sense of betrayal or dismissal, or even just an abandonment of the values they associated with the brand.
And that could have real consequences.
Absolutely. This could lead to a tangible decrease in visits from that core group, a wave of negative word of mouth, which spreads incredibly rapidly online these days, and just a pervasive sense among that group that the brand has lost the very soul that made it unique and special to them for all those years. The critical challenge for the company is that while loyal customers might not always be the largest segment in terms of sheer numbers, they often represent a disproportionately significant portion of consistent revenue, repeat business, and invaluable brand advocacy.
They're the ones telling their friends to go.
Exactly. Losing them, or even just dampening their enthusiasm, is definitely not a trivial matter for the bottom line or the brand's long-term health.
So it's really not an instant win-or-loss situation then, is it? It sounds much more like a complex, multifaceted strategy where the effects will just unfold gradually over time, almost like watching a long-term economic forecast play out.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. The true success or failure of this kind of rebrand isn't measured in the days or weeks immediately following the announcement, despite all the online noise. It will be observed over months, even years.
How do they measure that?
Through careful analysis of various metrics. Shifts in sales figures, broken down across different demographics if possible. The nuances of customer feedback surveys, what are people actually saying? Changes in geographical reach, are they gaining traction in new areas? And importantly, longitudinal brand perception studies how does the public view of the brand change over time.
So tracking the sentiment.
Tracking the behavior. It's a strategic gamble where the payoff isn't immediately clear at all. And the long-term impact on brand equity, that's the overall value and perception of the brand in the public eye, is still very much in play. Ultimately, it's a test of whether the potential gains from attracting new markets and modernizing its image will genuinely outweigh the potential losses from upsetting its deeply entrenched, established base. Only time will tell, really.
Ultimately, this whole Cracker Barrel story isn't just about a logo, is it? It feels like it tells us something much deeper about our relationship with brands, with change itself, and with our culture. Beyond the specific font and the image of the barrel, what does this whole debate, the passionate reactions, the memes, the losing its soul talk, what does it tell us about our collective psyche and how we connect to identity in this ever-evolving world?
Yeah, I think what these seemingly minor design changes really reveal is a profound truth about, well, human psychology and modern commerce, is that we often imbue these commercial symbols with an almost sacred, personal, and cultural meaning. A logo isn't just a company's face anymore. It becomes this subconscious anchor for our memories, our values, maybe even our anxieties about a rapidly changing world.
So these logo wars aren't really about the logos themselves.
I don't think so, not fundamentally. They're proxy battles, really. Proxy battles for our collective sense of identity, testing the very limits of how much evolution we as a society or as individuals are willing to accept before something feels irretrievably lost. They reflect our deeper societal debates about continuity versus change, about authenticity versus corporate polish, and about how we choose to balance that reverence for tradition with the relentless march of modernity. It all gets played out in these brand debates.
That's a profound thought. It's truly incredible how a simple visual, a corporate mark, can carry such immense symbolic weight for so many people. As you reflect on this whole Cracker Barrel situation, maybe consider how deeply personal our connection to brands can actually be. What other everyday symbols or brands do you have an unexpected emotional attachment to? And what would it genuinely mean to you if they fundamentally changed their look or feel?
It's a really interesting question to ask yourself.
Does a brand's evolution inherently mean losing a piece of its history, its soul? Or can it truly be a necessary, maybe even healthy, step for its future, even if it causes a temporary cultural tremor like this one? It's a question we all kind of grapple with, whether we realize it or not, every time a familiar image shifts before our eyes. Hashtag tag tag outro. And that's our exploration into the Cracker Barrel logo change and the really fascinating cultural conversations it sparked. It's clear that sometimes a simple redesign is anything but simple. It can become a mirror to our own values and anxieties about change.
Definitely a lot to think about there.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion. Next time, we'll look at Freakier Friday, the upcoming sequel to the Lindsay Lohan Jamie Lee Curtis classic, and why it's generating so much buzz already. See you then.